Hello, my name is Psychachu, or just Psy, and I've been thinking a lot lately about the subject of sex robots and what kind of position they're going to take in our society, especially whether it will be a net positive or net negative in the fight against sexual violence against women. We're going to bring up and discuss some views from the infamous court of public opinion, as well as a couple of scientific studies I found very interesting whilst I was doing my research for this piece. I have no journalistic experience or experience of any kind really, so this is an opinion piece at best. But I am in university, which if nothing else has taught me to list my sources in full. All image, text and music sources can be found in the description of this video, though there will also be an acknowledgement on screen when the quote or image is used, or when the music changes. I am also going to speak as clearly as possible to give those hard of hearing, or those for whom English is not their first language, the best possible chance of getting accurate automatic subtitles from YouTube. Let's begin. I've had the pro argument, if you will, for many years now, and most of them mirror the opinions shown in the next two posts. They are both replies from a Reddit thread posted a few days ago on r/morbidquestions, where someone posed the question, will sex robots lead to an increase or decrease in domestic violence? I have anonymized the users themselves. Is it ethical to buy a punching bag? Would a mannequin be any different? If I ordered one to look like a specific person or gender, does that make any difference? In theory, at the base of it, I can see why someone might agree with a stance like this. It seems to have some logical thought behind it, though personally I find it quite a problematic take. It's already displaying a kind of uncomfortable distance and objectification which we will definitely get into over the course of this video. The unprompted conflating of sex robot with punching bag is also something which concerned me on the face of it. This was not a reply to another person who had conflated the two, but a direct response to the original question. The second post, also a direct reply, reads, sex robots will decrease domestic violence. Men who would have abused a real woman will now abuse a robot that looks like a woman instead. More punching bags equals less faces punched. Now this is a less detached response and goes to the heart of the most common argument I hear in defense of sex robots having a positive influence on society, or at least on the domestic abuse rate. I do think, however, that it might be misguided. The vast majority of abusive partners enjoy a sense of control over their victim. Many of them also enjoy getting a rise out of them, or a sadistic pleasure out of watching them in pain. None of these things, obviously, are offered by sex robots, or mostly not. I have a little evidence to the contrary later in the video. It's highly unfeasible that those who have already abused women would, quote-unquote, switch over to sex robots. So let's focus on the new abusers, those with unhealthy mindsets which when entered into a sexual relationship with a woman will become extremely abusive. Could we offer the sex robots to them in an interventionary sense, so that we at least decrease the rate of new abuse victims coming in? Again, I'm not so sure about that. Those with little to no experience of real healthy relationships probably shouldn't, in my opinion, be given a robot to play with. What you do with your own robot is essentially between you and God. I'm not religious, it's just a common phrase. What I mean is your time with the robot is entirely unsupervised, which means there are no societal or social barriers in place to stop you crossing the line at some point. The desensitizing effect of being able to do whatever you want to a human-looking robot woman without consequence or witness is a dangerous position to put the uninitiated into. They could, at any time, grow bored with the lack of any real response from the robot, which is when they would choose to seek the company of real women with a set of horrifically same moral ideals and barriers in their mind. This returns to those new cases of abusers and victims we were talking about earlier. I found a strange parallel whilst I was thinking about this. When a small child pulls the head off a Barbie doll, the parents are often horrified. This isn't because they feel particularly strongly about the toy, but because, in my opinion, it's human-shaped, thereby it serves some kind of function in teaching a child how to treat other people when it grows up. This is just my own speculation here, but I think if sex robots look like humans, then they would serve a similar purpose. So, let's explore the other side of the argument. Why is there a debate over this at all? If the robots are merely a collection of metallic materials built into the shape of a human with a face painted on, why are we not simply treating it as an inanimate object? In other words, why does a sex robot take on a different role in our discussions than, say, a mug? The Australian arm at the Guardian newspaper answered my own question with an interesting parallel I hadn't thought of before: pareidolia. Reporting in 2021 on a study by the University of Sydney, they said the following: whether in a cloud, the front of a car, or a $28,000 toasted sandwich supposedly resembling the Virgin Mary, seeing faces in inanimate objects is a common experience. According to the new research by the University of Sydney, our brains detect and respond emotionally to these illusory faces in the same way they do to a real human face. Face pareidolia, seeing faces in random objects or patterns of light and shadow, is an everyday phenomenon. Once considered a symptom of psychosis, it arises from an error in visual perception. Now, obviously it's not the same as what we're talking about here. The light casting a funny shadow on a rock to make it look like it's smiling at us is not the same as a sex robot purposefully designed and manufactured to have a close approximation to a human face. It did get me thinking though, because if that rock accesses the same part of the brain which is activated when we look at another human being, then the same almost certainly happens when we look at a sex robot. I find myself wondering if this means we employ some of the same internalized social rules when interacting with sex robots too, and which ones are and aren't present in those interactions. I'd quite like to see an in-depth study of that nature, but unfortunately it's obviously quite difficult to get people to volunteer for a group of scientists to watch them interacting with a robot. And the act of the scientists leering over them in the first place would no doubt cause them to act differently than they normally would, meaning of course that this will be a challenging, if not impossible, study to design. I came across another study in my research though, one which intrigued and, to be honest, slightly shocked me. Conducted in 2019 by the National Library of Medicine in the USA, the study surveyed 72 sex therapists and physicians on whether they viewed sex robots to be a viable form of sexual therapy for potential patients. The shocking part, for me, the part which really made me think, was that only 11% of them said they did not believe it was viable. I don't know why, but I expected the figure to be a lot higher than that. The study went on to point out that matters of age, gender and occupation played quite a heavy role in the study, with female therapists, older therapists and psychologists, in contrast to physicians, being more likely to be skeptical of the idea that sex robots would aid their patients. Overall, the therapists and physicians drew up 3 main concerns with the practice, which we'll go through one by one. The importance of the personal definition of sex robots for the assessment of their therapeutic benefits. Which is a good point actually. We have no hardline legal definition of what a sex doll is. The blow-up kind? The high-end ones with inbuilt AI systems? And what kind of AI is installed? Does it come with therapist-approved responses or ones more aligned with the sex work industry? Does a robot have to bear close resemblance to a human at all? What about the ones in a more cartoonish or, dare I say it, anime style? Do they count too? As you can see, we have absolutely no standardization here, so the therapists were probably right to ask, well, what do you mean by a sex robot anyway? The therapeutic benefits and dangers of sex robots. Which gets to the heart of the issue, really. There are no studies claiming to have answered the question of whether these robots can actually help, either the men using them or the women they claim to protect. They're too new, and studying them so difficult that we're also fairly unlikely to get those answers anytime soon. Sadly, I feel this leads to a bit of a delegitimization problem. It stops any attempts to standardize the robots, which means they adopt the standards of the companies making them instead. Stories have already started coming out about fashion models who have had their likeness 3D printed into sex dolls, a practice we might be able to stop if there was a strong legal argument to protect the standardized robots against the non-standardized ones. As it stands, the robots are too new for laws to have been created around them yet. The final concern really got to me. Considerations of the quality of human-robot sexuality. I don't know why, but the way this concern was worded hit me like a ton of bricks when I read it, because that's what we're really talking about here, isn't it? Humans trying to build some kind of meaningful to them relationships with robots. Some will come with AI prompts if you pay enough money, which can give the dangerous illusion of actually speaking to another person. In my mind, these possess one of the most potent dangers, actively desocializing a portion of the population, a portion which traditionally perhaps struggles with social interactions or extreme anxiety, possibly members of my own autistic community who are ever seeking new ways to try and fit into a world not really built for them. In reality, the dolls who do not speak back at all, however, could be in even greater danger. The ones who don't react, regardless of what you do to or around them, blur the lines between human and object in a deeply uncomfortable way, and, in my opinion, a very dangerous way. And when these people have children, either the ones who interacted with AI robots or the silent kind, what rules exactly are they going to teach the next generation? Can you really see that bettering society in the long run? 2 more replies from the Reddit thread mentioned earlier seem to strengthen my point here. My theory is that it will increase domestic violence. Abusing a non-distinguishable robot will desensitize the abuser, and he would probably end up wanting the thrill of hurting a real person. Even someone who would never have hurt a partner could have their brains so affected by the situation that they start feeling like it's okay or do it without thinking. Abusers like to be in control of a person. If it's a robot with no free will, where's the fun in that? This post alludes to what I usually call in my head the psychological slippery slope. Removing social boundaries from someone's mind can have disastrous consequences, leading to a slide into deeper and deeper deviated thoughts and activities. We quite often see it in those who abuse drugs. Whilst they might remain reasonable at the beginning of their journey, they become almost recognisable to the people we once knew by the end. This is a deeply upsetting thing to watch happening to someone you love, and for me, this post taps into similar concerns. The next and final reply to the Reddit post I'm going to get into today is a 3-part reply by 3 separate users. They go as follows. They already sell dolls that look scared and prepubescent, but the character it's based on is 1,000 years old. Don't worry, I saw an inflatable chihuahua at a local adult store. There is no limit to what fantasies the adult industry will cater to. What does it mean? And what does this say about our mental health? It is surely a bright red flag. Alarming reports, even if they are anecdotal. I don't know if I really want to submit my Google search bar to such results. Pretty sure they'd land me on a list at GCHQ. But you're welcome to verify the validity of the claims at your own peril. What I feel we do all know is that the sex industry is, by its very nature, without the boundaries set in place by social society. It caters oftentimes to those who don't fit into that society very well, and those who need a quote-unquote moral break from taking part in it. Unfortunately, this means it has the potential to sink quite low in terms of its own morality, and I feel like we've all seen evidence of that over the course of our lives, especially through the wonders of the internet, where everything is so bluntly out in the open. In conclusion, I don't think there's any evidence that sex robots have the capacity to decrease domestic violence against women. They might actually increase it. They don't even seem to offer therapeutic benefits to those who purchase them. The scientific studies required to assess such things are incredibly difficult to build, but the psychological systems we use when taking such actions have already been discovered, and the outlook does not look good. Standardization won't stop this from happening, but it could at least offer a legal framework to operate within, which could minimize certain victims within the industry, if no one else. Ultimately, I see this one as a runaway train. I think sex robots are coming, whether we like it or not, and we need to find a way to protect those most affected, from the models whose likeness is stolen to create them, to the women abused by men who've gotten too used to them. Please remember to like, subscribe and comment if you enjoyed my little video. It would mean a lot to me. Peace out. Say.